The Rounder Report, Season 1, Episode 25.
Wow, 25 episodes, eh? Well, how are you doing then today, Mel? Well, actually, it's been a couple of weeks because, of course, I had my little 61st birthday, eh? My little celebration after we did the last one, and I went and had a week in the sun, whilst you also...
I was in Florence.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I take it Florence the place and not the person. Sorry. It was a bit irresistible smut. My apologies. It's very difficult for me not to be. I grew up in the 70s, you understand. Smut was the order of the day. Anyway, I thought, how was your trip, by the way, to Florence?
It was really good.
Yeah.
Really, really nice.
Beautiful city.
A lot of American tourists. Apart from that, it was great.
There's always a downside.
Always a downside.
Yes.
Beautiful city.
Yeah.
Wonderful people for the most part.
Yeah.
But a lot of tourists.
Yes.
But I guess they need tourists.
Well, of course, it's a bit like where I went is without the tourists, there'd be probably bugger all. Although I could happily do without them.
Well, you are one.
No, but I was one. Yeah, but
and that's the point. And it's odd that you sort of say, "Oh, I wish there were less tourists," but then you realise that you're actually part of the tourist industry yourself. So.
Yes, but funnily enough, I don't mind when I go to places. Sidges, for example, where I went, has a lot of American visitors. I really actually don't mind when there are a lot of Italian visitors, a lot of French, a lot of people from all over, really, go to Sidges, as I'm sure they do to Florence. Weirdly, I don't mind tourists from any part of the world. It's the British tourists I'd sooner be away from. And thankfully, there aren't so many.
Actually, one evening I had dinner on my own, and I sat in a restaurant, and then to a Saudi couple.
Sorry, can I wind this back? Where was the other half then? Why were you?
She was at work.
Working. Yes,
she was working.
There for work. Right.
So I had dinner on my own one evening, and I sat next to a Saudi couple.
Yeah.
Who didn't speak a word of Italian, and they were kind of being taken the mickey out of by the waiting staff.
Oh, that's right.
And I had to explain. I had to sort of explain to them what was going on, and I essentially spoke on their behalf. But we struck up a good conversation while I was having dinner, and I'm pretty sure he was some sort of Saudi royal in this like incognito. Because anyway, the conversation led, at a certain point when he was explaining what him and his family did, and I was like, "Oh God, I think you're maybe a bit more than you think you're telling me."
Is there anything you can reveal?
Not really.
Oh, really?
But I'm pretty sure he was quite high up in the Saudi world, right? And he was being very coy on the subject.
Right.
Yeah. But so I sort of knew
it was at that point you decided not to mention that you'd had anything to do with any journalistic content, such as podcasts and what have you, for fear of ending up in a lot of small pieces.
Well, and it kind of got to the point where I realised that I needed to sort of temper what I was saying because I didn't want to potentially cause any offence. I was like, okay, let me sort of keep it light.
Gotcha.
And to not go down the rabbit hole that I tend to go down.
Yeah, well, we all tend to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I could be in a sequel of Alice in Wonderland. Well, probably already was a sequel, but the sequel of the sequel, because I'm often down the rabbit hole. Anyway, talking of rabbit holes, it conveniently links us, of course, to the salient topic of today's podcast. As just a few weeks into her premiership, Liz Truss is already floundering on the political rocks. With talk among some Tories of trying to challenge and change the rules on the leadership challenges, so they can trash the Truss and start yet again, I might add. The mini budget, or budget, as it should have been known, presented by the new chancellor, rewarded, of course, the richest with the 1%, the richest 1%. Those are earning over £150,000 a year,
Correct, yeah.
with a tax cut by the abolition of the higher rate tax, which was, of course, only introduced a few months ago. And along with reversing the NHI increase, that's the bit we pay on from our salary towards health and pensions and what have you.
Isn't that the NSI?
No, it's NHI.
NHI, okay.
Yes, National Insurance Contribution, but it's NHI because it was originally as National Health Insurance. And if you look at your payslip, well, he doesn't look at payslip. He's never had a payslip. He pays himself on that. Which was, of course, an NHI increase, so he doesn't have to look at things like that. Introduced only a few months ago by the previous Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, along with another policy, have now been, of course, proposed to be reversed. And they intended to fund this by further increased government borrowing, forcing an intervention, of course, by the Bank of England.
To the tune of $60 billion. £6 billion.
Which runs us, I think, into about August time. We're in October already. Later this month, I think.
So we're 180 billion in the hole
already,
and it hasn't even been a month and a half.
And it hasn't. No, she's really only been in the job visually since really last Monday after the Queen's funeral, which, quite frankly, is long enough. So, basically, abolition of the top-rated tax, 45% for those earning over £150,000, of course, was ill-judged, and only now, when it became clear that a large swathe of Tory backbenchers might rebel, has there been the first major U-turn of Truss's premiership, of somebody who said only a week ago that she was not for turning.
And then she did a 180.
And she did a very quick 180, but in doing so, threw Truss Kwarteng, the Chancellor, firmly under the proverbial bus by suggesting she had nothing to do with the abolition of the policy. And then on Sunday, before we get right into the nitty-gritty, equally, they had to find somebody else to blame, because Truss Kwarteng didn't want to say, no, it was me who came up with this idea. Then, desperately looking for some minion to blame for this idea, turned on Chris Philp, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, who my husband described yesterday as having a wanker face. But it did make me smile. And of course, Chris Philp has denied his involvement in this policy. So we mentioned a few weeks ago when Liz Truss took office, or was about to take office, how grim a prospect it was, and suggested that she might only last as Prime Minister for about 6 months. Do you think we might have been a little bit generous on this point? And what's your take on the really what has been a debacle in her first
unprecedented disaster?
Yeah.
There's no other way to really put it.
Yeah.
6 months. Let's pray that she's not in office for 6 months, and let's hope that she's out much sooner. Interestingly, what you said previously was the question of when to run an election.
Yes.
Because we're getting closer to the point now that, even though the Conservatives have an 80-seat lead, I can only assume that if there was a snap election tomorrow, Labour would be in power so quick
Well,
it would make the
I
Conservatives'
saw
head spin.
based on this morning's polls that it would give Labour at least a 30-seat majority.
So that's a 110-seat move.
Yes,
110-seat move,
and I
which
did
is
also
a fifth of Parliament. Well,
yes.
Parliament's 500 and odd seats, right?
I did see where Lord Vasey on a programme this morning said that all the British people didn't want an election. This was, I think, on GMB.
Absolute nonsense.
And they did a snap poll, albeit on Twitter, and I think it was about 93% of the respondents said, no, we absolutely do want election because we didn't vote for this, really what has been a complete turnabout of policies.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I stand firm that I will not vote for Conservatives this time round. I absolutely will not. I absolutely will not.
Well, Anna Soubry maintained that she'd spoken to a lot of people, as I have, who've said that they will never vote Tory again. They're so incensed at the last.
Not again, for me at least, but this time round, there needs to be an election as soon as possible. Yeah. We need to get back onto some sort of logic when it comes to the economy.
Yes.
Because you could see this from a mile off. I think that's a problem.
Yes.
Even when it came to electing the leader, it's like political harikiri.
Oh God, yes, it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Everyone was
harikiri, for anybody who doesn't know it, is how the Japanese used to commit suicide.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of people won't know what the fucking harikiri is.
Sorry, but so the wisest, most sensible choice,
yes,
would have been, what's his name?
Rishi Sunak.
There is no.
It's obviously quite forgettable.
No, sorry, it's my fault. I had a brain freeze on that.
No,
one.
Don't worry.
But he understood the economy. He got us through really tough times, through COVID and the rest, and he would have at least been a more stable option.
Well, I think we said this, didn't we, in previous one?
Yes,
that at least he had some tried and tested, during a time of crisis. Yet here we've got Truss Kwarteng, by the way, who was business secretary, who seemingly now is trashing all the previous fiscal policies, economic policies of his government, and seemingly trying to reinvent the wheel as if the current cabinet is somehow a completely newly re-elected body and a completely new government, which is not. These people sat in cabinet and stayed quiet and voted for many of the policies that were.
Another thing an MP essentially said is that Truss essentially put all of her cronies into cabinet. Mm-hmm. Essentially, that's what was levelled at Boris Johnson.
Yes.
Right? She's done exactly the same thing.
Well, we said this.
She's put in her friends and those that supported her.
Yeah.
When the time came for them to make a decision, and then obviously, they were given preferential treatment and seats in cabinet. It's an absolute disgrace. The health minister as well is an absolute joke. To be fair,
Theresa Coffey.
And now she's saying she wants to scrap waiting lists.
Well,
the recording of waiting lists at least, because she says that it serves no purpose.
Well, of course, it serves a purpose. You need to know how something is performing in order to say, okay, this is how we need to improve it.
But she doesn't want to know, apparently, and she doesn't want the rest of us to know either.
This is shambolic government.
As we're also heading, this is the perfect storm. Inflation is going through the roof. Interest rates will have to rise.
Yes. I think now it's going to be about 5.5%.
They're looking at 5.5%, if not maybe more.
If there's not more fuck-ups. Exactly. And this is based on, of course, the assumption that a lot of these policies that were placed in the so-called mini-budget will now be withdrawn.
But think how scary this is. They were saying if you have a mortgage of, let's say, 400,000, you'd be looking at around £1,000 a month.
Extra
To pay in.
People just don't have it.
Where do people get that money from?
Yes, because they're all
On top of the cost of
yeah,
living.
Yes, exactly. On top
of energy prices spiking, on top of food prices going through the roof.
Petrol prices, because of the drop in the pound, they're not going down as they should.
Logistics are still an issue.
Yes.
We have a war going on top of that as well.
Yeah.
And we're looking at COVID numbers doubling.
Well, what makes you say,
which is something
as
else.
an aside, what makes you say with regard to the thing about COVID numbers?
Well, because
where's that come from?
Well, so apparently in August we were looking at about 100,000 a month.
Yes, and that dropped, as you know,
when
we were speaking the other day.
But now we're looking, but now we're looking at numbers that are sort of reaching that 200,000 mark.
Yeah.
And now people are really concerned.
Yeah.
That sort of heading into winter,
that it's going to come.
There's going to be like a COVID flu, parallel, whereby loads of people will be getting the flu.
One, you'll have the other. Yes.
And that we're just not prepared for it.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that now people can't afford to heat their homes, we discussed this last time as well.
Well, there's some saying they can't afford to cook.
Well, so we assume that more people will be getting ill. There's a very funny meme that was out that they were showing how a new modern English breakfast should be cooked, and essentially it was a plate with raw egg in the middle, raw sausages, raw bacon, like a piece of bread that wasn't toasted.
They aren't doing it already. Have a bowl of fucking cereal. You don't have to heat it up.
People might be forced to go down that route. No. I was having an argument with my partner, because we did a shop the other day.
Oh yeah.
And we were we were looking at every single item, going, well, maybe we shouldn't get this, or maybe we should look at a different brand. It's only 10%, but still, we're of this mindset where we sort of...
Well, it makes you reticent, doesn't it?
But you're thinking about saving everywhere.
Yes, I totally agree.
Save everywhere.
Yeah.
Don't spend unnecessarily.
No.
Pare down Christmas. Now we've got bird flu, which is the other
thing. That's solved one problem, isn't it? You'll have no fucking turkey to cook at Christmas. 4 million, never mind the problem of cooking it.
4 million cold birds.
Wow.
4 million cold birds.
Cold. Yeah, go.
So you're exactly right. They were saying that there's going to be fewer birds on sale. You might not get your turkey or your goose, whatever you get.
It's not the end of the world, is it?
Yeah, but 4 million. 4 million dead animals is an issue.
This bird flu thing has been going on really for most of the year, and there's been kind of a little bit often under the radar.
Yeah, I haven't heard about it until recently.
Well, I have. I've been kind of followed because obviously it relates to whether it could, I don't know whether it was H5N4. I'm not sure of the particular variant of this particular bird flu strain.
The latest big one was the N2.
Whether it might jump again, could it have the possibility of jumping species and end up being yet another pandemic? Because, of course, the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918 through to 1921 was a bird flu.
Going through the airport, by the way.
Yes.
There were monkeypox notices everywhere.
Oh, really? Wow.
Everywhere, especially in Italy. They're saying if you have these symptoms, if you have these certain lesions, please contact a member of staff. Do not wait in the queue. Go to the side, speak to someone.
Funny enough, I had a dream last night that I'd got chicken pox, not monkeypox. Chicken pox. I don't know where it come from. Probably subliminally from seeing quite a bit of news on the subject of monkeypox. Where are we? Have you
the numbers? No numbers. I don't know.
You don't know what number. We'll have to have a look at shortly on that because that's.
That's also. It was an issue. It's gone sort of under the radar. It's not really being spoken about. But definitely, when you get to sort of, big transit points, it's definitely an issue because there's signs all over the place.
Yes, clearly. I know they ask you questions when you go to any health centres regarding it, but
there must be some sort of government post that goes out to businesses and things like that, saying, "Look, this is still an issue. Please, be aware that you might have."
You don't want to become poxy. Certainly not as poxy as Liz Truss's government. Now, get back to what we were saying. The government has been saying, obviously, trying to defend their position. That households, of course, will save around £400 a year as a consequence of the cut in the basic rate of tax, which was proposed, which ironically, that cut was actually proposed by Rishi Sunak to happen, I think, next year, when he was still Chancellor.
Does that coincide with the collapse of the pound?
And as a consequence of the cut in base rate, the safer. But of course, due to their clumsiness, it means everything else, mortgages, as you spoke of, foreign holidays because of the drop in the pound.
Credit card debt in August was through the roof.
Really?
Through the roof.
So it means, you mean from the point of view that people are now using the credit cards more than ever just to manage household daily budgets.
It was the greatest it's been for a decade, they were saying.
Which means, obviously, you're just digging a greater...
And then you've got to pay interest on that.
Yeah.
I don't know what credit card interest is, but that's going to go up as well.
Well, of course, that's going to go up with everything else.
Because usually it sits around that 17-18% mark. So assuming that
goes I remember back as 20 years ago or 25 years ago, it was up at about 36.9. So we're probably going to be heading back to those kind of
Might get back there again.
Yeah.
But it's scary numbers, really scary numbers.
Surely it's dangerous, because if you go down that route of using your credit card for daily household items, it means you haven't got the money at the end of the month to ensure to pay that card off to not incur.
Well, no, because you're just going to end up paying the minimum.
Yeah.
And you're going to end up in a real hole in a few months' time.
Crikey almighty. So, yes. So, in actual fact, I saw a little snippet on the news yesterday. They were talking about their assertion that the households were safe, this, that and the other.
Have we got a hurricane coming?
I was just looking outside.
It's looking a bit scary.
And thinking my washing that I've got hanging out in an attempt to dry, it's probably going to be all over Hackney within about 20 minutes, but never mind. So, if she sees that this is going to help households, yet households are going to actually, because of the clumsiness of all of this, are going to end up paying more for just about everything else, particularly if you've got a mortgage. How does that back her argument about growing the British economy? How does this theory of theirs therefore work?
It doesn't. Assuming we are already in a recession, which is likely.
Well, semantics, isn't it?
In order for an economy to grow, you need people to spend money. If people aren't spending money, there's no growth in the economy. So how does that work?
Well, exactly.
So I mean, therefore, it doesn't make sense, then, does it?
Sounds like nonsense.
It's absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
You're going to see a contraction. Look, even on my high street, for example, apart from the fact that, let's call it, a quarter of the shops has shut down.
Seriously?
Quarter.
And let's remember, Mel is not living in a shithole like we are.
So a quarter of the shops are shut. But now what's happening is because one side of the high street is owned by a very wealthy individual.
Yes.
That owns pretty much half of one side.
Yes.
And the other side is owned by a number of individuals.
Yes.
It was sold as a portfolio a few years back.
Yeah.
Because this portfolio upped the rents, you are now finding businesses on one side of the road are looking to move to the other side of the road just to save a bit of money.
Right.
So businesses from one side are saying, go to hell because I'm not paying your rates. You refuse to reduce them. So we're just going to simply go across the road to an empty unit there because we can save 15, 20, 30,000 a year.
Yeah.
So you're going to end up in a situation where you're going to have one side of the road is fully tenanted, the other side of the road is abandoned. And what's that going to look like?
In the end, it doesn't achieve anything, does it?
If people aren't buying anyway.
No.
It's a really, really difficult situation. You're looking at property prices are falling. Exchanges are collapsing.
Yes.
People are trying to give back deposits on new builds, which is also, you remember when we were in a state agency
trying to get their deposit. Well, funnily
do you
enough,
remember when we were first working?
yes,
that people were giving back deposits and we were trying to sell them on to new clients.
yes, that's right. And that was around 2004 when there was a little glitch. And then when the market then picked up a massive pace up to about the end of 2006 to the middle of 2007. And then suddenly, when it all went wobbly bump, and let's face it, interest rate, the base rate was only at about 5.5 or 5.75% at that point. And suddenly, buildings, the people weren't completing on their purchases, and again trying to sell the deposits on even more avidly than they were in 2004. Absolutely,
or they were taking the loss and just moving on.
Yes, taking the hit. So I can't see there. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not an economist, although arguably Mr. Kwarteng has a PhD in economics. It doesn't appear that there's, perhaps that's a dangerous thing. I don't know. Perhaps it makes him believe his own shit that much more. But I cannot see how putting the country in such a situation where interest rates have to rise quite quickly to a point of maybe, let's say it's around 5%. How are you going to grow an economy during that situation? It just doesn't, to me, their whole premise doesn't stack up. And I noted yesterday in his speech to the Tory party conference that it absolutely lacked any policy substance at all. Of course, having had his fingers burnt the week before.
With no market sentiment, you can't grow the economy. That's simply how it works. There's no confidence. Without confidence, the economy won't grow.
But Kwarteng said only a week ago that the markets had nothing to do with it, and he didn't even really take any notice of them. What kind of comment is that for a chancellor to make?
Yeah, how did that work out?
I think you've answered it in one there.
Seriously? The Bank of England had to step in. Even the IMF.
I know.
Even the IMF. Things are bad.
When they say
when
need
the
to
IMF
change
is
direction.
saying, this is not a good move.
No.
It's the lender of last resort, for God's sake. And they're essentially saying, you know what, this is probably a bad idea. The shame on our country that these two have placed.
Well, there's a cost to that, isn't there? They're looking incompetent.
How does that look? On top of all of that, now the cost of repaying the debt that the government has to pay back has also increased.
I mean, that's just
so it just gets worse.
Yes.
So we're going to be forced to borrow more at a greater rate. In terms of our sort of, like you have like Standard and Poor's. They give sort of like ratings.
Yes.
The British economy is going to be like almost trash.
Well, I mean,
at this point,
my thought on it, as I said, I'm not an economist, but I would have thought you would have tried to use borrowing, government borrowing, to boost an economy at a time of deflation rather than inflation, because then you can obviously maybe borrow the money more cheaply in a deflationary cycle, and you can place it into infrastructure,
exactly.
all sorts
into
of
investment,
things
exactly.
that helps to grow the economy. I just cannot see how they can do it from this position by borrowing more when they're completely out of step with the Bank of England, who then has to kind of up the rates to undo what the government is trying to do. They're not working hand in hand.
Even the Bank of England weren't in unison, on the interest rate changes. The vote was 3-2 in the end, which also doesn't look very good, because it means that even the Bank of England is split.
Right.
As to how fast interest rates need to rise, the rate of increase, and where the economy goes. No one is sure. No one knows exactly what to do. Some are saying slower, some are saying faster, some are saying stay the course. There is no common sentiment as to where we need to be.
Which only, I guess, reinforces the argument we made in a previous podcast about, as we said earlier, that Rishi Sunak should have got the job that Truss has ended up with.
Yeah.
Because at least he has, from his previous career, an understanding of the workings of the market, as well as being tried and tested in the job as chancellor during a time of crisis. It just seems to me that the choice of Truss.
Call an election, let us make our decision, and let's leave it at that. We'll move forward.
Got to go. I mean, I also noted from the fact that this Tory party conference going on that there was a number of MPs, including ex-members of Boris Johnson's cabinet, of course, that were seemingly, although it's been denied, they were seemingly boycotting this week's Conservative Party conference. And the list originally included, I think it actually included Priti Patel, but I think she's actually giving, maybe it's on the fringe, I don't know, but giving a speech there today. But it's certainly, I don't think, in support of Liz Truss. Quite the contrary. David Davis is on that list, Rishi Sunak, Dominic Raab, Boris Johnson. What do you make of it? It's hardly a resounding support for a new cabinet and a prime minister when the whole point of the leadership and the finality of it was that they needed to bring the party back together. It seems more split than it was when Boris Johnson was in the full throw of his parties.
Would you get onto a ship full of holes? Because I wouldn't.
No.
I understand perfectly. You know, even Rees-Mogg was booed. Well, you know, entering the conference. You know, everyone has their own opinion of him. But I mean, why would you want to get involved in any of it? I wouldn't attend either, quite frankly.
It's boring, isn't it?
It's the best way for quick change. If you show complete distrust in the current government, the best thing to do is to use your feet and not even attend.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
The interesting point is if so many people were against Truss, who put her into power? Yeah. This is what I don't understand.
Well, it's a Tory party member. I mean, don't make any mistake about it. The Tory party membership, I said in one of the podcasts a few weeks ago that some 20% of Tory party members didn't even bother voting. That at the finality of the vote, that the two protagonists, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, were still less popular than the person that the MPs, backbench MPs, had just got rid of, i.e. Boris Johnson. And indeed, today, they're even less popular than they were a fortnight ago. Boris Johnson, I mean, I think they're all wishing that they hadn't done the deed. What basis did they vote on? Was there given the fact that the age range of vast majority of Tory party members, was there a little bit of racism in play to not choose Rishi Sunak? I just don't understand on paper.
Or was it just good metrics? Maybe it was just good metrics.
I just didn't understand on paper why they would pick somebody who very clearly, even in the debates, looked rocky. Didn't you think she looked rocky? Yeah. She looked as dodgy as shit, frankly. Hopeless. Absolutely hopeless right from the outset. And I can't get my nut around it. It's as if this, like, well, somebody said it was a form of self-annihilation. Others have suggested worse. Chris Bryant, I noticed, tweeted something yesterday saying, well, it's actually in effect because of the rebellion, potential rebellion, it's already a hung parliament.
Yeah.
So, do you think she can actually turn it around?
No, not at all.
And how long do we give them now? Have we revised the 6 month?
Yeah, it's got to be before Christmas, I hope.
And how will they manage to actually get her out?
Well, you were saying they might look at changing the rules.
Yeah, because I can only see
in terms of ascending the leadership again.
You know,
I don't know how that. I'm not sure how that works.
Look, don't get me wrong. I can see, all prime ministers part of often there's a bit of a disaster, but there's disasters and there's disasters.
But it's the
end, and it's the fact it's so early on. It's just eggy.
It's the end of the Tory party, for the next election.
Yes.
You can't put someone in place and then get rid of that person within 2-3 months. It just looks abysmal. But on the other note, you can't then install someone new and then not call a general election.
Especially if the agenda has completely changed from the previous election.
Yes,
because I totally agree. This is going to do for them. And what I can't get, as I said, it's like trying to reinvent the wheel, is we've now had 4 leaders, 4 prime ministers, we're on our 4th, and seemingly it won't be long before we're on the 5th. And they all try to pretend and distance themselves from the previous cabinet like they weren't involved when many of them were. And I find that completely.
Look, essentially, accept that we've lost the general election this time round, keep Truss on board, call a general election, Conservatives will lose it, fine. When they lose, change leadership at that point, and then try to build for the forthcoming election.
Yeah,
there is no other way around it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they can find anybody. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Who exactly do they pick? And the problem is, Sunak, he has his own issues in terms of his wife and the family behind him, because there are a lot of sort of indiscretions.
They're not insurmountable. I mean, I think people would forgive that if he made a decent fist of the job. Clearly, Liz Truss, her ears have been cloth right from the outset, and she didn't even.
It's almost like women think that they're never wrong.
There's a subject for another day, which could get us into a lot of trouble.
It's like one of those.
Especially at home, if your name is Mel.
Seriously.
Depending on this time of the argument.
Well, anyway.
Because obviously, coupled with that, she's managed to already, in the last few days, to add to the issues.
Well, what else has she done?
Well, there's the accusation that in a meeting with King Charles, Liz Truss roundly banned him from attending the COP27 climate change that is to take place in Egypt, which one of her cabinet ministers, not she, one of her cabinet ministers, which I find interesting in itself, it usually implies that there's a lie going on somewhere, has denied that such a conversation took place.
But so he shouldn't really attend because he has to remain impartial.
Yes, but so why deny it?
I don't know.
Just say, no, this is the conversation we had, and Liz Truss come forward to say, no, this is the conversation we had, and we feel from a constitution point of view, X and Y, own it.
But then it's also...
It's like throwing Kwarteng under the bus. No, the 45p tax rate had nothing to do with me, didn't know about it, bollocks.
But it's also like cutting King Charles's legs from underneath him.
Yes, isn't it?
So he's already, whether he's liked or disliked, he was very vocal on green issues and environmental issues.
Yes.
And that's the one thing he truly cares about.
Yeah.
And to then deny him the thing that he's been championing for decades seems a bit, it's a bit unfair, but if he has to...
I think it is, because it's not particularly political.
It's very politically charged, though. So, there's a line, and he can't cross it. So I can understand... I don't understand why they denied it, but I understand why it happened.
Exactly. Do you think she'd have been better off? Because this is the problem.
He wouldn't even have to mention it, surely. It didn't have to come out in the media at all.
Exactly.
He simply could have not attended. People could have asked why. Yeah. He could have released a statement saying, "I'm now the king. I need to remain impartial," and that's that.
Yeah.
It's no longer my position to be able to affect such conversations, and that's that.
It's like the other debacle.
It's even worse, essentially. You're essentially shutting down the monarchy, which is awful.
Well, she's obviously...
She's got problems.
Queen of the U-turn, isn't she? I mean, let's be about right. Kay Burley had her banker rights on it during one of the debates. She's made this 180-degree turn on a key policy. But then, obviously, as usual, tried to dress it up as something else. Her words being, "Oh, I agree," finally, after a week, "I agree that perhaps we could have communicated it better." No, I don't see. I do not see that it's a bad. It was bad form, increasing government borrowing. It's not about the communication, but she's done that before. She did that once during one of the debates when questioned on an issue. She tried to say that the media had presented her intention in the wrong way, and then got fired back at with a bundle of quotes, which clearly undid her argument. So I think we're pretty well in agreement then. She's toast.
Yeah.
But we've got to kind of live with it until there's a way of getting rid of her, because under the current rules, she's got another 11 months before anybody can kick her out.
If things continue in this vein,
yes,
there'll be people on the streets protesting to have her out. Well, it's not far off, I bet you.
Remember what when we were speaking in one of the other podcasts, I said that the key issue going forward will be people's pockets.
And it's more, and it's more ammunition for the other parties.
Yeah.
The longer she stays, the more ammunition for the other parties. The worse the result will be in the election, which is already going to be an unmitigated disaster. But I mean,
well, she just hasn't got it, has she? She's got no ability. I mean, here's one of her quotes from this last week. She says she's not bothered about being popular.
Succeeded.
Well, you can rest assured, Miss Truss, that you've indeed succeeded in that. But what a thing to say, because the purpose of being Prime Minister and running a government is also to get re-elected. And there's a measure of popularity involved in getting re-elected, surely. It's like, no, we really hate you. We really, really dislike you intensely. You're the least popular candidate we've ever had. Let's vote for you. It's just not going to happen, is it? So how do you get off saying, I'm not bothered about being popular?
But it's the kind of thing you say in a period of emergency. Like if we were under war conditions and you have to make decisions, that might not be liked by many people, but it's for the best interests of the country. What exactly is she doing for the best interests of the country or its people? So far, not a lot.
Yes. Well, the word that springs to mind is gormless. I mean, already she's less popular than an angry hemorrhoid. So from both Mel and I, and seemingly about 90% of the country, please switch the light off and close the door on your way out, as it certainly looks as though you're on your way out. We have to move on. We've got to get rid of them.
Yep.
It's only going to get, I think, more desperate over the winter if this is how it's all started. And whilst they might be able to repair some of this damage, I suspect they've been hauled under the waterline in shipping terms. So it's only a matter of how much water they can bail out before they actually go under.
Yeah.
Anyway, I actually found a quote.
Come on
then. Which was actually it was marked as anonymous, but then So there's two quotes today, because this morning I saw Andrea Leadsom, who obviously was filmed at the Tory party conference yesterday. So it was a juggle, really, which one was better, because Andrea Leadsom, regarding the recent mess, simply said yesterday, if you're in a hole, stop digging, for God's sake. I just thought was pretty good. But my actual quote for the day, stupidity is not a crime. So, Liz Truss, you're free to go.
Goodbye, everybody.
Ciao for now. Thank you to all who are listening or viewing the Randall Report. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Please do subscribe. It is absolutely free. What is it, Mel?
Free.
And of course, you can contact us via the following email address, therandallreport@gmail.com. There's also our Twitter feed, @Randall_report, and Instagram, _Randall_report. So subscribe, hit the notification button, and do feel free to leave us a message, and we will do our level best to reply. Until next time, wishing you all peace and happiness. Be kind to yourself and others.